I'm Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist, and let's answer the question, what happens if Joe Biden becomes president? Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee for president of the United States. It will be Biden versus Trump. And a lot of people ask this question every election cycle. What will happen in the country? What will change? And certainly this is primarily directed at U.S. residents, U.S. citizens. They will be the most impacted by who is elected. And so I'm going to talk about some of the specific things that you will see change in your business, in your life. Certainly here at Nomad Capitalist, we talk to high earners, entrepreneurs, and investors. That is our focus. It's my own experience over the last 16 years in business. And what I can tell you is you're not going to see nearly as much of a change as you think. Whether Biden gets elected, whether Trump gets elected, whether you go back and it's Bush gets elected, certainly elections have consequences. That's what I heard all the time watching politics growing up. But I remember being in high school when George W. Bush won the election, and they had this big, massive tax cut that Republicans were all in favor of and Democrats booed for the entirety of his presidency. And if you were a high earner, your top marginal tax rate went from 39.6% under Bill Clinton down to 35%. Now, what we talk about here at Nomad Capitalist, go where you're treated best, means legally lowering your taxes by going offshore, among doing other things to increase your freedom, protect your family, build wealth faster, etc. 39.6% to 35% may feel good, it may rouse up the base. It's nothing. I went from 43% to 1%. You're never going to do that no matter who's elected president. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the specific things that you're going to see if Joe Biden gets elected president, what you can do about it, and why it may or may not matter. All right, let's get into the list. What happens if Joe Biden becomes president of the United States? In a word or two, higher taxes on successful people, less ability to make choices and have options in your life. We're going to go through the specific list. What I've always said, though, is if you're looking for more freedom, go where there's more freedom. If you think the government's taken away your ability to do X, Y, or Z, find a place where X, Y, or Z is allowed. If you think taxes are too high, you're never going to get your tax rate that low in the United States or any big country like it, any big Western country. They have too much debt, too many problems, they move too slowly, they're not agile. You got to go where tax rates are lower. And this is why we talk about go where you're treated best. From my perspective, I don't care if Joe Biden gets elected. I don't care if Bernie Sanders gets elected. Now, I personally care because if Bernie Sanders would have won and he would have gotten elected, more people would have been coming to me and hiring me to get out. But that's not going to happen. And so what I've really looked at over the years is I'm a lifelong business owner. I don't expect any of these people to make my life better. Some people benefited under Trump for sure. Tax rates went down, more opportunities to invest in certain things. I think Joe Biden would certainly roll some of that back, but you're never going to get the same benefits in the United States that you would get if you went offshore and what I call country shopped, if you went where you were treated best. And so that to me is the big takeaway from all of this. You don't have to worry whether Trump or Biden wins because you can always find a place where you are welcome. But let's talk about the hit list for Joe Biden. $15 minimum wage. If you are employing people, particularly younger people, entry-level people, this could be an issue. Had a gentleman come to me about a year ago who ran about 24 McDonald's. He owned 24 McDonald's in part of the United States. I imagine this would hit him, and that's going to push people to adapt more technologies, to use more automation, which is going to have an impact on the economy for sure. With more people out of work, we've kind of got a taste of that with the coronavirus and people being out of work and what that looks like. People get angry. And who knows what could happen next. Joe Biden could just be the beginning. But $15 minimum wage is going to push more things to automation. It's going to make it more difficult for you to run your business. Paid family and sick leave, he wants to introduce or expand that. That may or may not be that controversial. For me, I know when we used to have some Western Europeans working for us, they would tell me how you could always, in Europe, as long as you had a doctor's note, you could just get paid for months and years, in some cases on end, by your employer who had to pay you because, hey, you're sick, what can you do? I say, well, what can I do? I've got to pay you your high salary and these ridiculous employment taxes because you're sick, or You made a lifestyle choice, so I'm paying for you. Now, maybe that makes me the evil Grinch, but quite frankly, I don't expect anyone to pay for my lifestyle choices. I'll do what I want. I'll take care of myself. I'll self-insure. And if you want to do something, if you want to have 18 kids, if you want to be sick, whatever you want to do, I'm not saying that Joe Biden's going to make you pay for your employees for the rest of their lives if they have a sniffle, but I'm saying he's going to introduce paid family and sick leave. What he's also going to introduce is 2 years of university for free. Now, I haven't seen the full details on this. I know some politicians have put out that they want people to be able to go to school for free in state. So in the United States, obviously, if you live in Arizona, for example, and you've been paying taxes, or your parents have been paying taxes in Arizona, you can go to one of the state schools in Arizona at a discount because you've been a resident, you've been part of the community, you've ostensibly been paying, and so therefore it's cheaper to go to school in Arizona than in New Mexico, for example. Whether that's going to be part of this, I don't know. What I find interesting with this whole student loan bubble, which is one of the biggest bubbles out there, is how people have gotten pretty entitled about it. I mean, you can watch videos on why we should just forgive everyone's student loans. And you could make an argument for that. But here's the thing. We've all been 18 years old, and we all know that even those of us who probably acted older than our age and we had certain ambitions, we were still 18. We were still immature. We still lacked certain critical decision-making skills. And so when you've allowed 17 and 18-year-olds to go unchecked into taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases in student loans with no requirements on whether to go to school, with no requirements on what they study, with no need for marketability, no feasibility studies. Hey, if you borrow $300,000 to learn, how to play the flute, or how to learn German, is that going to be marketable? Are you able to pay this money back? No one's asked that, right? And so there's already been this policy where we've encouraged people to basically go to school, not for free, but to do whatever they want and not have to worry about the consequences of that. And so I think that once you get the camel's nose under the tent on 2 years of university for free, number one, it'll be 4 years, it'll be almost immediate. The country is $25 trillion in debt. I don't know who's paying for this. We'll get to that in a minute. It's you. I don't know how long you're going to be able to have restrictions on people. I don't know how long you're going to be able to tell people, hey, you should study engineering. We're not paying for your Polish polka history degree. I don't know if you're going to be able to say that. I don't know if you're going to be able to tell people they have to go to school in their own state, but we will see. He also, Joe Biden, wants to expand Medicare to 55. The progressive wing is angry with him on that. He does not want Medicare for all, but he wants to extend it. If there's one thing we've seen the U.S. government is really bad at, its health care. And as I've traveled, I'm a very pro-free market guy, capitalistic guy, low-tax guy. I've seen how some people in a few smaller European countries have been happy with their national health care. And it's caused me to think, all right, it's not the system that I think is the right system, but they're happy with it. In the U.S., no one's happy with it, I don't think. Just extending it. The U.S. has been so inefficient running the healthcare system. Now, through the coronavirus mess, we've seen other Western European countries definitely see cracks in their system, which makes me think that it's going to be even worse if you extend it. What Joe Biden also wants to do is expand the Affordable Care Act. What that means for expats, I'm not sure. Obviously, in the Obama era, if you were an expat, you did not have to have an ACA qualifying plan if you had a foreign employer, i.e., if you had a foreign company offshore and you were an employee of that company, you did not have to pay into the system or have a policy. What happens going forward for expats? I'm not sure. Now, let's get to the taxes. Increased capital gains tax under Joe Biden, no surprise there. You've seen the Warren Buffetts of the world whining for years about how capital gains tax rates aren't high enough. Now, the average person, you and I, we invest, we earn capital gains, we pay tax on those. For most of us, it's not our main income. We have businesses or jobs or whatever the case may be that make more than we do in capital gains. Warren Buffett and others have become so ingrained in the psyche of the American left that now it's just seen as the right thing to do, that these rich freeloaders are getting their low taxes on capital gains and they're taking advantage of the system. Warren Buffett could write a check to the Treasury. He chooses not to. There's an option right on the IRS website. Send in a check if you feel patriotic, and if he thinks he's not paying enough, he's welcome to. But he thinks because all of his money comes from investment income, that therefore everyone else should pay more so he can feel better. Your capital gains tax rates will go up under Joe Biden. He also plans to raise the corporate tax rate, which may or may not affect every small business owner. He says he won't make them as high as they were in 2017. But if you remember, before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the United States had the highest corporate tax rates on planet freaking Earth. Higher than all the countries that, those Norwegians, they're like a socialist country. Yeah, tax rates are much lower there. Everyone's been lowering their corporate tax rates. And so even 21% is no great shakes. I mean, you go to a lot of countries where the tax rates are zero, they're in the single digits. Countries like Barbados just slash their tax rates into the single digits for everyone. You have countries where tax rates are 9 or 10 or 12. You have countries where tax rates are 15 or 20, but you pay when you choose, and you can reinvest the money and get the benefit of it until then. So this is why I talk about go where you're treated best. If you run a business that's portable, there's no reason your business should be in the United States. And there's no reason you should be in the United States. Okay? Hiring overseas is one way to circumvent all these new laws on employment. And I've helped some of my friends who have physical businesses in the US put part of their staff in countries like Serbia, Armenia, Philippines, and elsewhere. Because corporate tax rates will go up. Trump did certainly do a good deal on that. For people who were overseas, it was not as good. It was not as good of a deal because America first. Those of us who chose to live outside of the United States, it wasn't such a great deal. But if you run a normal business, it's totally U.S. You got your tax rates lowered. They're going to go back up under Biden. To what levels, we don't know, but they'll probably go back to being some of the highest in the world. He also wants to pay for infrastructure with new taxes on, let's say it all together, corporations and the wealthy, of course, right? Because the wealthy don't pay enough. What's interesting is you go to a lot of countries in Europe, for example, taxes there are certainly very high. But what's interesting is you do have a couple different brackets. Sometimes you have as little as 2 different progressive tax brackets. And the lower bracket might be, 20 or 25%, which means everyone is paying something. Yes, there are exemptions, your first 10,000 euros or whatever is free, but everyone is paying something. In the US, half the country pays nothing. And yet if you're wealthy, if you're successful, even if you're not that wealthy, even if you're just a 6-figure earner, you are considered rich by them. Even if you're a 6-figure income earner in like LA or New York City, where that money doesn't go nearly as far as it would in, say, Oklahoma, you're rich. They don't differentiate. You're just the evil rich because you make more money than Joe over there. And so they're going to raise your taxes to pay for infrastructure. That's one thing they're going to pay for. What astounds me is how I go to Dubai, I go to Malaysia, I go to Tbilisi, Georgia, for heaven's sake, and I drive around on roads that are, quite frankly, much better than you'd find in many parts of the U.S. And I have people that I work with that they'll go back to where they're from in the U.S. and they'll say, why is it the roads in this former Soviet republic that I'm living in and that I'm doing my business from, why are they better than they are in Milwaukee? Why is that? And yet the taxes where they are far lower, and they're able to pay 0% or 5% or 10% where they live, and they're getting much better roads. How is it that works? You might think that the country has some corruption going on when it comes to that kind of stuff. So higher taxes specifically for infrastructure. Joe Biden does not want a wealth tax, but he also does want to raise just normal income tax rates on the wealthiest people in the United States. And he also wants to make business more difficult for things like internet companies and other businesses. He wants to put more liability onto businesses. I imagine more onerous regulations, things like privacy acts, things like all different kinds of things, which in and of themselves, some of them may be well-meaning, may have some benefits, but it's more regulations for your business to follow. Also, despite the fact that the country is tens of trillions of dollars in debt, and they're going to start giving away more free stuff, put more people in the healthcare roles, they're also going to pay farmers more subsidies to farmers to be climate friendly, expand the military budget. Seems like no one can get out of that one. They're going to decrease freedoms. You can't send your kids to certain charter schools going forward, and other things. So that's what happens if Joe Biden becomes president. Now, as I said, I have opted out of the system. I opted out of the system for years by not living in the United States. I opted out permanently by expatriating from the United States. None of this really makes a difference to me other than Maybe the stock market doesn't go up as much, and certain stocks in your mutual funds may not do as well if they don't have these tax cuts. That's what's going to happen, though. And so, here's the perspective I take on this. When Trump won, we saw a slight decrease in people who would contact us but never wanted to hire us, who basically just wanted to vent about how Obama was ruining the economy, the country was going in the tubes. Suddenly, Trump was elected and the country went from going in the tubes to being the best country on earth again. If one person is going to change the entire direction of the country, then I probably can't help you. The United States still has dwindling personal freedoms. As I said, taxes are still pretty high. There's still a lot more regulations in the U.S. for many businesses than there are overseas. Still a lot more headaches in terms of hiring people in the U.S. The grass is greener. There are places where you can go where you're treated best. No one person is going to make a gigantic difference. We have Mikhail Saakashvili, the president of Georgia, got elected to the country of Georgia in 2003, came in 2004, slashed the number of taxes from in the 20s down to 6. Put it in the Constitution, you can't raise them. He's coming and speaking at Nomad Capitalist Live, our conference. The country was small and they were open for real reform, like let's fire every single police officer in the whole country and start from scratch. That's what gives you real powerful change. And when you have something like that, that's when I think you really get on track. The United States is a country that is nibbling around the edges. Your taxes go down 5%, they go up 5%. And so, listen, if you're the 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur we talk to, and you're making, $1 million, yeah, it might cost you 50 grand a year. But really, here's what that means to me. You probably don't really notice the extra 50 grand a year. Now, if you looked at it from the perspective of 10 years from now, if I invested that 50 grand, yeah, that might be $1 million. And that might be substantial for you. But what it really is, from my perspective, it's a kick in the butt. It's just a little bit more painful now if Joe Biden gets elected. It's just a bit more of an inspiration for you to go where you're treated best and look at the stuff that I've been talking about here for years. Because the 50 grand, it makes a difference. But 450 instead of 400, it's money for sure. But to me, the 400 is the bigger issue. It's like when I tell people, okay, you moved from Oregon to Washington State. You saved a couple points on state income tax. Cool, good efficiency, I'm all for efficiency, but you didn't really solve the problem of high taxes. So for me, the biggest effect for those of you who are watching this video, who are still sitting in the United States, who've been thinking that Trump was going to solve all your problems and suddenly you were going to live a tax-free life and everything was going to be perfect. I'm not pro-Trump, I'm not anti-Trump. I'm not really pro-Biden, but I'm very agnostic to the whole situation. What I want is for you to find the motivation to go where you're treated best, and if paying a couple extra percentage points on tax, if having some more regulations, if having a few of your freedoms taken away is the price that motivates you to do that, then I'm all for it because I want you to go where you're treated best. How can Nomad Capitalists help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.